So today we're going to be showing you two builds that I feel like are the go-tos for solo legendary. Whether you guys are playing solo summit legendary or if you're playing legendary missions. The first one can either be played in solo or in group play, and the second one the same thing, solo or group play. But before we do want to say a quick thank you to our sponsor of this video, FOLLW. If you guys don't know them, one of my favorite supplements to take is an energy drink right here, baby. This focused, this is what I like taking. Probably one of the better supplements for energy, especially if you don't like drinking coffee. All you do is take a scoop of this right here, then you dump it in here, right? And then once you're done, put the cap on it. I like putting a little bit of ice on this bad boy just to make sure it's nice and chilled. Just move it around, shake it a little bit, and then just sip it. And that's what we're gonna be sipping on throughout this video. Hopefully you guys are ready. Remember, FOLLW, use skills at checkout if you guys want to get 10% off your order. So let's dive into it. The first build will be a solo legendary group play legendary summit build. And I'm telling you, this build just holds up. It puts out a lot of damage. And as long as you play this build smart, you should be able to stay up at all times. I spec'd it so I have enough armor to take a few shots, and then with the backpack, I'm able to have that armor regen that keeps me up most of the time. And this skill build is just slapping content. And the way I have the build set up, it allows me to get those trophies so that I can increase the amount of damage that my skills are doing. And all the talents pair up together to create one of the hardest hitting skill builds in the game with still having some type of survivability. Now, if you guys are looking for a really solid build to run in legendary content like the summit, well, this is the build for you. So the first thing you guys want to do is make sure you guys have the technician class. And the reason why is because that's going to give us one extra skill tier, so that way we can spec into one armor roll. And then not only that, we also going to get 10% skill damage, so that actually works really good with this build. Now for the weapon, we're running the capacitor. This is probably one of the better assault rifles you can run with the skill build because of the talent that's on here. Shooting enemies build stacks to a cap of 40. Each stack grants 1.5% skill damage. After 5 seconds, the stacks decay 1 per second. For each yellow you do have, you do get 7.5% weapon damage. Now, if you guys don't have this, you guys could always run the test subject. It's another great assault rifle that will give you 40% extra skill damage as long as you're hitting the enemy and your skills are hitting it. For my secondary, I do have the mechanical animal, but you can put anything else you want here. This has future perfection, and this allows me to get overcharge. Weapon kills at skill tier 6 grants overcharge for 15 seconds, but there is a 90-second cooldown on this. But yeah, just the secondary I like putting on there. So let's get into the build. We are running a 3-piece Empress International, and the reason why is we get 10% skill health, 10% skill damage, and 10% skill efficiency. So we have one core attribute for skill tier. We have skill haste, skill damage, and then a skill haste mod. Ideally, this is what you're gonna see throughout the build, skill haste and skill damage, because we want our skills to come back if they get destroyed. And on legendary, a lot of times those enemies do destroy it, and this helps out with that. For the chest, we're running a Hannah U. Now the one piece gives us 10% skill haste, and like I said, I want my skills to come back. We have a core attribute of skill tier. We have skill haste, skill damage, and another skill haste mod on here. Now the talent on the chest piece, we're running kinetic momentum. When in combat, each skill generates a stack while active and not on cooldown. Bottom line, this can give you up to 30% skill damage because you get 15% for each skill, so total of 30% if you're running 2 skills at full stacks. Probably one of the best skill damage chest piece talents that you can put on there. For the holster, we're running our second piece of Empress International, and then we are gonna have one piece on here that has armor roll besides the backpack. So this gives us 170,000 armor. We have skill damage, and then I also got an armor regen on here. And since I'm gonna have a stack of 3% armor regen on this build, plus this extra 4,800, it's actually pretty good. But you could also put skill haste here too. For the knee pads, I'm running the Wyvern knee pads. This gives us skill damage 10% for the one piece. We have skill tier, skill haste, and skill damage. For the gloves, we have our third piece of Empress. So we have skill tier, skill haste, and skill damage. So you guys should see the trend, skill haste and skill damage throughout the build. And then one of my favorite backpacks to run with skill builds, the Memento backpack. It gives us weapon damage, armor, and skill tier, and we have a skill haste mod on here. Now the reason why this backpack's so good, if you guys don't know, if you guys get the 30 stack, that's 30% skill efficiency, That's 30% weapon damage, and that's 3% armor regen. Remember, skill efficiency is skill damage, status effects, skill haste, so it's just gonna improve my skills on this build. And every time I pick up a trophy, I will get another 30% skill efficiency, 20% armor, and 5% weapon damage for those 10 seconds. That's why it's one of my favorite backpacks to run. This allows me to get that 1.1 million armor and still have max skill damage. Now, my two favorite skills to run on Legendary are the Striker Drone. This can give a 73,000 damage, cooldown 11 seconds. So you see, if it gets destroyed, I'll have it back within 10 seconds. I do have duration, health, and damage mods on here. Now, I love pairing this up with the Assault Turret, and the same thing. Look at the cooldown time on that, 11 seconds, damage 117 seconds. And this all improves with the Memento backpack. So once I have a 30 stack, I have 30% skill efficiency. So all that damage, all that skill haste, cooldown is gonna be better. We have damage, health, and skill haste mod on this. And that's the build right there. This build 100% is tested in Legendary. And don't worry, we're about to show you another build, but this build, I prefer to run this in Legendary missions, which I feel like are a little bit harder than Legendary Summit. So let's get into that build. This build is an absolute monster, and just recently I started running it on Legendary missions, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the reason why is because how you can target multiple enemies at once, and you have so much damage that even those tanky enemies have no chance. As you guys seen, I'm just shredding through these heavy gunners, and these guys are usually a big issue when playing Legendary missions. But with this build, it makes them almost a cakewalk. But let's get into the build. So first thing you guys want to do is make sure you have the gunner class. Probably one of my favorite classes to run on any kind of PvE content, especially if you're running solo. Now for the AR, you can run any AR in the game. I personally like running different ARs when I'm playing PvE. So right now I have the Carbine 7. It has an 111,000 damage, 790 RPM, 50 round mag, assault rifle, health damage, damage target out of cover, and then I have the talent Killer on there. Now what Killers allow me to do is get an additional 40% extra critical hit damage on a build that's already stacked with a lot of crit chance and crit damage. So we're gonna be hitting that much harder, and that will last for 10 seconds. And then for the secondary, pull out the Scorpio for those sticky situations when an enemy does get behind you. Pull this out and you'll be good to go. Now, as you guys saw, you probably noticed that I was able to take down more than one enemy at once, and that's all because of Negotiator's Dilemma. Remember, this gives you 15% crit chance, 20% crit damage, and then the best piece about this is the 4-piece. Critical hits mark enemies for 20 seconds, up to 3 marks total. When you critically hit a marked enemy, all other marked enemies take 60% damage dealt. That's why you saw multiple enemies die at once. But also where it gets even better is whenever a marked enemy dies, you gain 2% critical hit damage, stacking up to 20 times. That means you can have an additional 40% critical hit damage on this build. Now we do have weapon damage, critical hit damage, and then a critical hit damage mod. Now for the chest, we are running a Fenris chest for the 10% assault rifle damage. We have weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage, critical hit chance mod on there, and then we have focus. Increases total weapon damage by 5% every second you are aiming in when you have an 8x scope or higher. So make sure you get the 8x scope, and then look at this, up to 50%. That means we can have an additional 50% damage on this build. That's why you're seeing those enemies just melt. And if you want to see the full potential of this build, Mark 3 enemies have full stacks and just see these enemies dropped one after the other. Now I will tell you, focus does take a little bit of getting used to, but once you guys do get used to it, and once you guys know how to really use it, you'll know that it's pretty easy to keep the stack up. As long as you keep holding down the scoped in button and you hit reload, yes, it'll pull you out the scope, but it will keep your stack fully active. If you guys look at the bottom of my screen, focus is always active even after each reload. So that's why this is probably one of the hardest hitting talents in the game. And if you play it right, even though it's a little harder to keep scoped in, you'll just melt through these enemies. So give it a try and let me know what you guys think. Now we get into the holster. We do have our second piece of Negotiators. This is gonna have weapon damage and critical hit damage. Our third piece of Negotiators is also gonna have weapon damage and critical hit damage. These are the knee pads. And you probably guessed it, our 4-piece of Negotiators, the gloves, weapon damage, critical hit damage. Now for the backpack, we have a Grupo Sombra backpack with the 15% critical hit damage. We have weapon damage on there, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and then a critical hit damage mod. Now we do have vigilance on here, increase total weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage does disable this, but that's why we have the shield. And when you're playing this build, you want to try to play corners, so that way your shield is kind of protected by the wall in front of you, but you can still scope in and land your shots on those enemies. Because keeping vigilance active as much as possible will definitely help you melt those enemies so much faster, because 25% extra damage is a lot. And if you can keep that fully active at all times, you'll see that these gold, purple, whoever you're shooting at will definitely take a lot more damage. And you'll see those higher numbers popping up. And you probably saw it from the gameplay footage. We are running the assault turret. We throw this out to give us some type of position. Enemies tend to focus it. I'm able to keep landing my shots. And since we hit so hard, it makes it really easy. And then obviously the Crusader shield allows us to use an AR. And remember, positioning yourself will definitely be key with this. So run these two and you guys are gonna notice how well they work together. If we dive into the stats, take a look at it. 52% crit chance, 175 crit damage. Now this does not include the talent killer, where we get an additional 40%, or once we have full stacks from negotiators for that additional 40% crit hit damage. So additional 80% critical hit damage possibly on this build when you're fighting those enemies. And that's why this build hits so hard. And if you can hit multiple enemies at once, it works really good. 21% health damage, 105% headshot damage. The damage just continues to stack, plus add focus and vigilance on top of that. And that's why you're seeing enemies will just drop. And if you're worried about those robots, right? The robotic dogs, don't worry about them. They will melt just as fast. You tag one, you tag the other, get that negotiators going, and then just start pegging one. And as soon as you finish off one of them, you're gonna look over to the other one and he's not gonna have any health. And that's what's gonna be really cool about this. I love it. I think it's probably one of the most strategic builds in the game for Legendary, especially since you can focus on multiple enemies. And since in Legendary you get a lot of rushers, this really helps out with that, because if you're able to really just focus on one enemy and still take down 3 of them, it just clears the room a lot faster, as you guys are seeing in this gameplay. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this build. If you guys have any questions, any more questions on this, let me know in the comment section. Thank you guys again for all the support. But until the next Division 2 video, hey, nothing but skills is out. I'll see you guys around.